Round 3, fight! Sorry, that dates me a little bit, I suppose, but that was a great game as I was growing up. Anyway, welcome to part 3. We're going to do problems 31 through 45. I've totally failed in my objective to go a little faster. It's because I end up, stopping and talking about one problem for a really long time. Or in some instances, because my brain just stops working, and then there are these long, awkward pauses that must be excruciating for you watching these videos. Anyway, let's continue where we left off, going through the 2005 AP Microeconomics test. Just trying to answer these questions. So here's number 31. For an economy with a straight line production possibilities curve, which of the following must be true? Oh, this one's familiar. So straight line... that was horribly ugly. Let's just erase that. So what of these are true? The opportunity cost of producing another unit is constant. Yes, that sounds true. Oftentimes we end up with a concave one, and that means as we we have increasing opportunity costs. But if it's straight line, those opportunity costs are definitely constant. Resources are completely adaptable to alternative uses. Absolutely, they must be. Otherwise we wouldn't have that constant opportunity cost. And resources are used efficiently. I don't know what a straight line production possibilities curve has to do with resources necessarily being used efficiently. We can't say that. It just tells us maybe where they could be used efficiently, but doesn't guarantee that we are actually on that line. I'm going to go with D with just 1 and 2. Consumer surplus is defined as... Well, consumer surplus is that whole idea of, that I'm getting a good deal, on your supply and demand graph. It's this whole area above the equilibrium price. Because somebody was willing to pay this much, but they only have to pay this much. So it's the difference between the value that consumers place on a good and the price that they actually pay. That is the definition of consumer surplus. Which of the following would increase the equilibrium price which of the following would cause the equilibrium price of good X to increase? Alright, so I drew my supply and demand. What things would cause that price to actually go up? If producers of good X find a new technology that reduces the cost of producing X, no, that would increase supply and decrease price. The price of an essential input in the production of good X increases. Yeah, because if we did that, the supply would shift back, would decrease because it's more expensive to produce, and that would drive prices up. I'm going to go with B. Let's check the others though. Goods X and Y are complements, and the government imposes a tax on good Y. That means people would want to buy less Y, and because they buy those things together, they would also buy less X. So the demand for X would drop, driving down the price. Good X is a normal good, and the government increases income taxes by 3%. Well, that means I have less disposable income, so I'm going to buy fewer normal goods. I might buy some more inferior ones, like the ones made by Aaron. That's still funny. Alright, good X is an inferior good, and the government decreases income taxes. Well, that's the same thing we had there. Except that now I have more money, so I buy less inferior goods, so no. Number 34, the graph above shows the supply and demand curves for artichokes. The Surgeon General announces that eating an artichoke a day dramatically reduces one's likelihood of developing cancer. Simultaneously, an infestation of the artichoke weevil? Wow, you learned something new. Weevil severely damages the crop. Which of the following will definitely occur as a result? Alright, well, if it reduces cancer, my demand for artichokes is definitely going to increase. And if there's an infestation in the crop that damages it, that's going to severely reduce the supply. So the supply of artichokes will not increase. The price of artichokes will definitely increase. Demand for artichokes went up. The quantity of artichokes grown will decrease. We can't say. We're not sure what's going to happen to the quantity. The profits of farmers who specialize in growing artichokes will no, they can charge more money. They'll make more money. Number 35. The price of an airline ticket is typically lower if a traveler buys the ticket several weeks before the flight's departure date rather than on the day of departure. This pricing strategy is based on the assumption that so are we basing it on the fact that travelers are not aware? No, we would probably assume travelers are aware. Travelers do not have alternative modes of transportation. No, travelers do. I guess maybe at the last minute they don't, but no, they have alternative modes. I once couldn't find a good deal on a ticket, and so I drove through the night with a rental car for work. Ugh. Anyway, travelers will pay any price to travel as the departure date approaches. No, they still aren't going to pay any price. They might be more willing to pay a higher price. Anyway, the marginal cost of the last few seats on an air... No, the marginal cost is the same. In fact, the marginal cost is pretty darn low. It's just the additional fuel from a little bit extra weight of having another person on it. Anyway, I digress. Travelers' demand becomes less elastic as the departure date approaches. That's absolutely true. It's harder for me to have some alternatives as the departure date approaches. I might have... The only other option might be for me to drive through the night, which would suck. Oh, alright. Technological advances will lead to... This is number 36. An increase in marginal... No, it's not going to have anything... Utility, again, has to do with demand, and no, it's not going to increase utility. A decrease in the average total cost, yeah, I think technology would hopefully lower costs. If it lowers costs, we can probably sell stuff cheaper. That's not going to decrease exports. And that should be in the macro test anyways. Anyway, an increase in marginal costs, no, it's going to decrease costs. Diseconomies of scale, no. No. It's probably going to lead to economies of scale, if anything. Anyway, marginal cost is defined as... marginal cost, again, marginal is the next one, so it's the cost of adding one more. So, change in total cost resulting from producing an additional unit of output. Yes, that's correct. I'm not even going to read the rest. Ooh, 38 and 39 are based on the following payoff matrix. Sweet. This sounds like Prisoner's Dilemma stuff. The payoff matrix above gives the profits associated with the strategic choices of two firms in an oligopolistic, that's a mouthful, industry. The first entry in each cell is the profit to firm A and the second to firm B. So, firm A, firm B, got it. If the two firms collude, firm A's and firm B's profits would be what? Well, if they're going to collude, they're going to both do the high pricing strategy, and they're going to make $100 each. And so I'm going to go with... Oops. If they agree to work together, they're going to sell at $100 each. Or, yeah, sorry, the profits would be $100 each. Number 39, if each firm simultaneously chooses its pricing strategy without collusion, firm A and firm B's profits would be what of the following? Okay, so now we got to look at this scenario independent. So firm A, if they think that firm B is going to choose the high pricing strategy, firm A is better off choosing, I'm just looking at firm A here, they're better off choosing a low. If they think firm B is going to choose low, then they don't have a strong preference, because $50 or $50 is the same. So they have a slight leaning toward choosing the low pricing strategy, because that might get them better off. Firm B, so now we're going to look at firm B's, and so we'll say if firm B thinks that A is going to do the high one, so we'll just look at the high pricing strategy, then they are definitely better off doing the low pricing strategy. And similarly to firm A, if they think A is going to choose the low one, well, it doesn't really matter which one they choose. So ultimately, they have a slight stronger feeling of choosing low. If they both choose low, we end up at, oops, that was a horrible square. We end up down here at 50 and 50. So 39, I'm going to go with 50 and 50. Hey, I just checked my answer. I'm correct. Good job, us. Alright, in the short run, a perfectly competitive firm should shut down whenever. Ooh, I love this one. Oh, that was horrible. There's the graph. Marginal cost curve. Average total cost. Average variable cost. Anytime that price is down below that average variable cost, that means we're not making enough money to even cover the costs of my labor and those variable costs. So in the short run, a perfectly competitive firm should shut down whenever the marginal revenue, no. Oh, here we go. The minimum average variable cost exceeds the price. There we go. Because remember, price is marginal revenue for a perfectly competitive firm. They would take the marginal, so that's the demand, equals the price equals the marginal revenue. So there we go. I'm going to go with A. Number 41. A constant cost, perfectly competitive industry is in long run equilibrium. If the demand for the good increases, which of the following will occur in the long run? Okay, so a constant cost, perfectly competitive industry. If the demand for the good increases, let's think of, normally I draw my supply curve, and supply is equivalent with marginal cost, and I draw my demand curve as such, but in this case, marginal cost is constant. So there's my demand, and it said if demand increased for the good, which of the following will occur? I'm going to think the price will actually remain unchanged, because it's constant cost and we're going to produce until, where supply equals demand, and that's going to be at that same price. And it is a perfectly competitive industry. I think that's important. 42. Assume a firm uses only two inputs, capital K and labor L, to produce its output. Well, this one is going to be a mouthful. Let the marginal product of capital be MP of K, the marginal product of labor MPL, the price of capital be P sub K, and the price of labor be P sub L. The least cost combination of capital and labor needed to produce a given level of output is given by which of the following conditions? That one's a doozy. Pause this video and think about that for a second. Or maybe you didn't pause it and you just want to hear the answer. If additional machinery can get, one piece of additional machinery can get me this much additional stuff, and the cost of that additional piece of machinery costs me this amount, I would want the ratio of that to be the same as the marginal product of labor compared to the price of labor. If I could get more product per dollar that I spend on capital, so if the marginal product I can spend $10 more on machinery and I can get 15 more things, whereas 10 more dollars on labor gets me only 5 more things, I would definitely want to buy more capital. And of course you're going to get that diminishing marginal return on those investments, and so ultimately I'm going to choose the amount of capital and labor until we've got this ratio that is the same. I wouldn't want marginal product of labor divided by the price of it to be greater than. I'd want to get it till it's equal. That's just a weird, I don't think I would want that. I wouldn't multiply them together. In fact, if you're an algebra person, you'll recognize that this and this would be exactly the same thing, so there aren't going to be two right answers. And no, I'm not looking at the marginal product because I got to look at it in terms of how much it also costs me. You know, a machine might cost me $1,000 and another worker might cost me $100, and that machine might get me more stuff, but it also might cost me more. So no, I need to factor for the price of that. That one was a tough one. 43. A firm's demand curve for labor is equal to a segment of its, well, it's a segment of its marginal cost, or sorry, I almost misread that. A firm's demand curve, I gotta really read these problems correctly. A firm's demand curve for labor is equal to a segment of its marginal revenue product. I'm going to go with 43D. If you remember our graph for a firm's labor, you know, in a perfectly competitive market, you can hire as many workers as you want, and it's going to have that marginal factor cost, so you can buy as many as you want. But because we get diminishing marginal returns on our additional workers, we might initially get a little benefit, but really in the long run, and we often represent it just by that section there, the demand for labor is based on how much additional money, the marginal revenue, based on the per additional worker that we get. So marginal revenue product curve. A Lorenz curve. Oh, we did not talk about this in very much detail, but Lorenz curve and the Gini index are two things that measure how the income distribution, how even or uneven the income distribution in a country is. And the Lorenz curve, so yeah, anyway, both of those things do that. So yeah, the Lorenz curve shows the distribution of personal income. Let's see. The Surgeon General has determined that smoking causes cancer and heart disease for both smokers and passive smokers, non-smokers who breathe smoke-filled air. If cigarette prices are determined in a free market, which of the following will be true? Okay. Oh, nuts, we didn't do this graph in class today. But this will be the last one for this video, so essentially you have your demand and your supply, right? Demand and supply. And this is the demand is the marginal benefit and supply is the marginal cost. However, this is the marginal cost to the person who's smoking. The social cost is actually a little bit greater than that. So I'll draw it like this. Supply equals marginal social. Ooh, I hit that button. How do I make it go away? There we go. Marginal social cost. And so we're actually going to, if it's a totally free market, we're going to produce this quantity at this price, but really based on the social costs, we should be selling at a higher price and selling a lower quantity. So, number 45, the price of cigarettes will be too low. Yep. And the quantity of sold will be too high. Yep. Because we're actually selling in a totally free market, we're selling at points. If we add in the social costs, we'd actually want to be producing at that point there. So I'm going to go with A. Alright. We're 3/4 of the way through. Come join me next time. I hope you're enjoying this as much as I am. Have a good one.